Rob, we've got Cheri Sternman coming up right now from Crayola. In fact, she's actually the Global Education Director of Crayola.
Crayola, what an amazing company and history.
Yeah,
I'm
and
excited about
so iconic and ubiquitous with just knowledge of how many people played with their Crayola crayons growing up.
I'm looking forward to talking to her about creativity because it's a real focus for them.
Is a real focus, and being able to, obviously we're here at the HB studio again. Ding 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 ding. Brought to us, supported by Intel. You've got your HyperX microphone on.
Looking ready to go. Yeah.
Looks like we've got the poly camera all going. Let's dial Cheri in and let's learn.
Let's do it.
Rob, did you enjoy playing with Crayolas when you were a little boy?
Oh, I loved Crayolas.
Well, we have the Director of Education for Crayola right now, Cheri Sternman.
G'day,
great
Cheri.
to have you, Cheri.
Good to be with you.
Now, before we even dive in, Rob, when you were a little boy and used to colour in did you stay in the lines when you used to colour in as a boy? Or messy?
Pretty well. I pretty well stayed in the lines.
Stayed in the lines
as best I could.
What was your go-to colour? What was the must-use colour that was the one that had worn down the most?
Definitely.
In the McTaggart
I don't know
house?
if they call it this at Crayola, but it was definitely the metal grey.
Metal grey.
Yeah, I liked drawing castles. So
Castles.
that was very simple. Yeah.
Your creative mind ticking over even as a little boy. Cheri, what about you? Did you have when you were a smaller child? What was your go-to color when you were using your crayons?
So I colored outside the lines, and my favorite color was purple. And about 20 years ago, when Crayola came up with the new shade of purple, I had the pleasure of winning the new name. I came up with the name Royal Purple, and it was chosen. So really a double pleasure, favorite color and being able to name them.
Now, Royal Purple, just before we even dive in, and obviously we're on the Reinvent the Classroom podcast, and we're talking about learning, and I'm really excited to unpack creativity with you. But the term Royal Purple, do you know why purple was a royal color?
So the history that I've read is that it was one of the most difficult colors to gather and collect from nature. Some sort of a sea creature.
Yes, like a small shelled creature. And I think the people who made the color were called purplers, and the process was called purpling. But keep going.
And so whenever anything is rare, there's a whole story around privilege, right? And so the leaders, the royalty, would have access to this rare color. That was my understanding of the history.
Yeah, and apparently a very, very long, very drawn out process, and the science and methodology behind it. So we'd have to crush up all of these sea creatures. Peter probably wouldn't be a big fan of organically made.
But clearly not anymore. I can assure you that no sea creatures
were harmed in the creation of Crayola's Royal Purple. But they would have these big barrels, almost like whiskey barrels, and I think it was like a fermentation process with urine and crushed sea creatures, and they would let it sit, and the shells would sink to the bottom, and they would have to separate the colours, and over weeks and months, and they would end up with this purple dye in this purpling process. But it was such a long, drawn out process, and for thousands of these sea creatures, you just get like a cup full of this dye, and it was such as you say, it was rare. Anything rare has value. The only people who could then afford to use the color purple were people wealthy enough, and that was usually royal families, and that's where we get our royal distinguished sort of color. And I think even that's why Cadbury chocolate is royal, is that purple covering, because it was the Queen's chocolate, and they had the royal seal of approval, so they had the officially licensed the purple color from the British royal family to be able to use, because it was the Queen's choice of chocolate and all that sort of stuff. So very, very well chosen name there for Royal Purple.
That was a great ancient history lesson about long ago times, probably, Roman times or Egyptian times. I just want to assure teachers and children that no sea creatures are hurt. Right now, crayons behave very differently, and we're not extracting them from nature.
That's very true. That's very true, and a very, very valid point. Modern processes are utilized now. No sea creatures were harmed in the creation of the royal purple in Crayola. But you're in this role, a very unique role in Crayola as the director of education for Crayola. That must give you interesting scope to look at creativity on a whole different spectrum, because Crayola is much more than just crayons, correct?
Absolutely. So the first question you thought to ask when you heard Crayola is, what's your favorite crayon? Because that is our iconic product. But the company's mission is really richer and deeper than that. It is our mission, our pleasure, to help parents and teachers raise creatively alive children. And so that's something that my education team works on every day. We consider ourselves on the idea side of the business, not the product side, and that we really share inspirational ideas, creative teaching tips, a lot of resources that can be used in the classroom.
You've had a passion and a connection to creativity your whole life. Like, what was your childhood like? Were you a creative child? You said before you like to color outside the lines, and I know you're a caring mother yourself. Like, how did you embed creativity in the lives of your own children?
So my approach and philosophy to parenting was really to let kids lead the way. When I was young, I had a lot of creative autonomy, and that's what I wanted for my kids, to really pursue whatever form of creativity they were interested in. So, writing, drama, visual art, and they're all very, very strong in the arts.
Do you have as a child, were you inspired by someone who was creative or aspirational, or as an adult, is there someone that you look to go, wow, this is a good role model for me, or this is a good role model for the younger generation to be inspired by?
Not so much a person, but an approach and a mindset. Because I've learned to consider creativity not an artistic skill, but an overall mindset which embraces risk-taking and really exploring outside of the box. We have a saying that we like to speak about at Crayola. We say, when something is created, something bigger happens. And it's really because you can't create anything without putting a little bit of yourself into it. So it's a very personally relevant, personally enriching experience, no matter what you're creating.
Cheri, what has changed over the years and decades as far as the research? I know you spend a lot of time translating research for parents and teachers and running a lot of professional learning. What did we not know or thought that we knew 20, 40 years ago that we know now about creativity?
Oh, I love that question. Because some of the most recent studies about creativity show that parents and teachers are really aligned on understanding the importance of creativity for personal fulfillment and also for society and fueling the economy. And I don't think that was as true, 20, 30 years ago. Some of the outdated notions around creativity is that it's a gift for the talented few. And what we've learned more recently is that everyone is creative. Creativity can be nurtured, it can be taught, and it's really within all of us. It's not just a few lucky people.
How could you encourage a parent that might be feeling, and I know a lot of parents like this, who might be feeling, well, I'm not creative, so I don't know how to pass creativity on to my children?
So a lot of adults say they're not creative, and they usually follow that sentence with something like, I can't even draw a straight line, as if those ideas had anything to do with each other. But being creative isn't about being the next Picasso. One of the ways I like to start to break the creativity myths is to ask the person, what do they think creativity means? There are lots of different definitions of creativity. My favorite is the ability to see what's not there and create something that hasn't existed before. But there are many, many definitions. And for all my years of working with teachers and parents and asking that question, no one has ever said that their definition of creativity means you have to paint or draw or be an artist.
I'm curious to see. Obviously, you've had a very fascinating career to end up in such an iconic role in such an iconic company. Like everyone on the planet would be familiar with the brand Crayola. And actually, before we started rolling, I was talking to you about actually. Without warning, when we were dressing up our set over here, there's a Crayola set on the bookcase just in the background there, and I saw the logo and immediately went, oh wow, we're going to get to talk to Cheri, and there's Crayola like right there, front and center. In your own, I guess, personal journey, how did you come to be in such a position at Crayola, and how does that link in with your own creative aspect in your life?
So I started my career as an educator and loved the creative aspects of teaching. Really leaned into the creative teaching and learning approach, project-based learning, STEAM. It goes by a lot of different names, but you know what that classroom looks like. Very similar to what you often talk about in reinventing the classroom. It is literally a classroom that's alive with energy, with kids' ideas pouring out of them. We call it the excited buzz. You know, you can hear it in the classroom. It's not silent memorizing and busy work. When I worked on my graduate degree, the research that I worked on was all around creativity and how we can encourage it, nurture it, with different ways of measuring it and assessing it, which is always difficult because how do you assess something that's so out of the box? So really all of my background has been at what is the most effective way that we can teach children and help them blossom.
Oh, so along that line, what is the most effective way that we can do that?
So inquiry is absolutely critical. One of the most amazing traits that just radiates from children is their curiosity. And curiosity is really at the root of all cognition. You have to be interested in order to learn. So the best way is the inquiry-based approach, letting kids, dive into their questions, do some trial and error, learn from their mistakes. But I would say curiosity and inquiry is clearly the driving force.
What a great answer. But another reason Peter's not going to like this podcast. Well, curiosity killed the cat.
Curiosity killed the cat. Yes. Peter, not a sponsor of the podcast yet, but
Not yet.
but look, actually, I wonder, have you ever seen something when you are in a fortunate position to see educators and schools, at a very high level across such a sphere? Have you seen something where you've seen a school or a teacher go, wow, that is just next level. What is happening here is something that could be or should be replicated, something just a little bit magical about what's happening in this particular classroom?
So one of my favorite observations is when I see groups of kids do what I call child-led game making, where kids, they become subject matter experts because they're creating a game about something, whether it's around weather at younger grades or sustainability or any topic they're interested in. So in order to make a game and develop the rules and the playing cards and the physical setting, they really have to research the topic, think about ways of looking at it. It's probably one of the richest learning experiences. And then, of course, to test it out and have a group of classmates play your game and give you feedback and help you improve your game. It's magical when you can see this happening.
Yeah, that's that old. Again, you're tapping into some traditional pedagogies there, aren't you? Like, to ask a question, you have to know the answer. So you're developing I guess a catalyst, an enzyme through game making and game design of this is build your knowledge base, then ask questions in a bunch of different fun ways, but as a byproduct, you had to learn the content in depth and know it authentically.
Absolutely. And what I get excited about is when I see kids build challenge cards and solution cards and debate if that would be a realistic solution. And they pick tough subjects. I've seen elementary school, primary kids do subjects like biomimicry and how we can learn from nature, not just about the environment, but learn from the environment and from nature. So they pick really tough questions. They come up with innovative rules. It's lively.
I'll try and ask a creative question now, just in the theme of things. Cheri, if you were the queen of everything and you're wearing your royal purple all over, and you were able to make decisions about, what everyone was going to do to support creativity in young people and its development, and even of adults in workplaces and, throughout our society, and you were able to say to government and politicians and corporations and, community organizations what they needed to do to encourage that and how they might encourage that.
I have the answer. Get rid of standardized tests. Let kids learn authentic, real-life problems. Let them lean into their problem-solving skills. I think it's fascinating that the Gallup poll did a survey of both parents and teachers in 2019, so right before the pandemic. And they were asking about effective practices in schools. And the first part that was so exciting is that the number one learning outcome that was most important to both parents and teachers was creativity and problem solving. But to answer your question, I don't have to convince parents and teachers of my desire about getting rid of standardized tests. Only the policymakers and politicians, because only 4% of parents and 1% of teachers thought that scoring well on standardized tests was among the most important learning objectives. So why aren't we doing what's right by kids?
Well, that actually leans right into, I guess, the larger concept of what this entire podcast is all about, and this collaboration, obviously, with HP and Intel, with Reinvent the Classroom. Like, let's re-look at what it is that we're doing in education. Let's evaluate it. Let's learn from it and try and do things better. And I think you've actually raised a couple of topics there that these are things that we could be doing to better suit the needs of our students. There was our chief scientist here in Australia, actually the previous chief scientist, Alan Finkel, I think right at the start of the pandemic, so around the same time that the Gallup poll was done that you were referencing, I think he came out with a quote within one of his annual statements that 50% of the students entering kindergarten this year would find their employment in jobs, in industries that do not currently exist. So if the whole purpose of our education system is to help society, and it helps society by doing two things, either having a pathway for further learning for our students or a pathway for employment for our students, if we're not leaning into creativity, if we're not doing the things that you talked about there about being a risk taker and trying something and following your inquiry and learning about things in a deep way and responding in an unpredictable sense, then how are we able to prepare them for employment in a world where 50% of those jobs aren't currently in existence?
Absolutely. What you just shared as a quote is very consistent with a report from the World Economic Forum. The report was called The Future of Jobs, and they said that 65% of the children entering primary school will end up working in jobs that do not exist today. But even scarier, the report said that nearly 50% of the subject matter knowledge that is acquired in the first year of college will be outdated by the time those students graduate.
Wow.
So, it really pressure tests what is the purpose of education. Children are not empty vessels to be filled with information that other people have already figured out. Instead, we've got to give them the problem-solving skills and the creative confidence to go carve out new frontiers.
Use that term creative confidence. That was the Kelly brothers, wasn't it, that first started using that terminology through design thinking in Stanford. But you used another term at the start of this conversation, which was a lovely term. I've never heard it before. Was it confidently alive? Was that the term you used?
Creatively alive, right?
Creatively alive.
Creatively alive, right? Think about the energy that phrase expresses. That's kids leaning into their ideas, asking questions, creating things with full abandon. It really means that what parents and teachers can do on a regular basis is bring to life the 4 pillars of the creative process. And they're really easy, right? So the first is create. Give kids lots of opportunities to generate ideas, bring them to life, whether that's a new invention, song, story, drawing. The next is to present what they created. Think about your creative process. You create something and you usually share it with somebody else, right? Whether you hang it on the refrigerator, sing the song to someone, share the story. So just think of all that confidence in that life that comes into presenting your ideas. But the other 2 pillars of the creative process are equally as important, and we sometimes forget to go back to them. The third is to respond, right? So it's how you as the parent or the teacher respond to the child. But what's really delicious is when classmates respond to what they just saw and they give the student feedback that enriches and builds upon each other's ideas. And the fourth, which is my favorite, is connect. This is what makes learning really sticky, memorable, meaningful. When we reflect on experience and we connect what we just did to prior knowledge, personal relevance, societal context. So the way, we lean into creatively alive kids is those 4 pillars of the creative process.
That's going to require a real culture of, a creative culture, obviously, but safety in being able to share things that you might not be comfortable sharing. And then, the expectation that is going to be responded to in a positive way, even if there is critiquing of it.
Exactly. But isn't that what we want? Don't we want classrooms to be these safe spaces where you can give each other feedback?
1000%.
And this doesn't have to be a huge project, right? This can be a kitchen table experience. This can be, a class project. But you're right. The ability to trust others to give you feedback and respond. This is part of what I call human literacy, right? Understanding how to interact with each other,
and it is human.
Is just as important.
These are the exact same problems that we have in the workplace and challenges that we have in the workplace of working together, being able to share things. And I think as soon as people start sharing what they do, it just it shifts the whole culture of even the workplace and the classroom.
So a lot of what you're talking about, the workplace, the school environment, the culture there, those sometimes have been called soft skills, right? Communication, collaboration. And I think we do ourselves a horrible disservice when we talk about them as soft skills. They sound like, they're discretionary and you can push them off to the side and do them at recess and at the playground. Instead, if we talk about those skills like human literacy, understanding how to work with each other, give each other feedback, communicate, and that human literacy is as important as written literacy, spoken literacy, then we're elevating those human interaction skills.
I love that phrase, creatively alive. I'm curious because I know you mentioned before that obviously you've got a whole team at Crayola and developing creative options, and you mentioned resources and a whole range of different products and tools, and that Crayola is much more than just colourful crayons. What is it that your team does practically do? If I'm a teacher or a parent and I'm listening to this podcast and I've come across and I'm hearing this wonderful conversation about, I'm on board with what Cheri is saying about creativity, but what could I practically do? I think you're in the STEM field. Is that correct? Like, you've got STEM resources. You've got things. What is there for a teacher to dive into and sink their teeth into?
So we provide free monthly programs for teachers all over the world. So all the Australian educators who want to participate and join our programs, they're on demand, right? They're free. All they have to do is visit the Crayola Education Facebook page. So I'll tell you about 3 of our very popular monthly series. The most popular is Read Along, Draw Along, which features amazing authors and illustrators who start the show by talking about what inspired them to create this awesome book, right? The books that we feature are just incredible. They deal with such important topics of diversity and inclusion and cultural traditions and social and emotional learning. We've got amazing books. And to hear the author talk about what inspired the idea, it's huge. Then the author reads the book. So children are literally on the edge of their seats to hear the story from the author's own voice. And then the artist demonstrate the illustration techniques, and children can draw alongside the artist. We reach about 2.6 million educators with this program, and we'd love to have more Australian teachers joining us. Like I said, the time zone's not a problem. You can watch on demand.
And there's printables that go along with these programs too.
So these are videos that you can air to children. We do have another program that does have printables. That's our Creativity Week. That's our annual flagship program. And we had fantastic participation from Australian teachers this year. Our colleagues in the Crayola Australian office really did a great job of getting the word out. And the Creativity Week program is every year in January. Again, we have a fabulous author and illustrator talk about the story. We have real high, very popular celebrity authors and illustrators. We had James Murray from Impractical Joker. We had Dylan Dreyer from the Today Show. We had Darren McDaniels from Run DMC.
I was going to say that was
fabulous.
I remember seeing that. I remember us actually talking about that at the time. And you're talking about creativity, and you've got this diversity of authentic celebrities, and you've got Run DMC up on the Crayola site and connecting with teachers, connecting with educators, and finding a pathway. I'll have to make sure that I do connect with Rachel Williams, who's actually our director of print here, because next time we circle around, we want those people getting those downloadables and printing things off on their HP printers as well. So I'm sure she'll be very excited to hear that that there's a pathway that we can help you with your with your footprint and your work within teachers, not just here in Australia, but obviously New Zealand and around the world. Big fan base of this podcast in Sweden from one of our earlier podcasts, but having that global footprint. Very fascinating. And you're authentic, and I think this is what comes across every time I've engaged with you now over the time that I've known you. Your authentic engagement or drive to make a difference in a creative sense to the teaching and the learning and being able to impact. If you're having just think of the scale of that. What was the number with the teachers that you're connecting to?
Oh, so for the Read Along, Draw Along monthly series, we reached 2.6 million educators. So one of our other shows that we started in the pandemic, it's called Creative Spa for Teachers. And it's because they were feeling so stressed, and we're still continuing the show because it's so popular. This is a special time and place where teachers, whether they're in a classroom or parents or teachers too, this is where the adult can come to rejuvenate their own creative energy. So the series is focused on all sorts of techniques to unwind, to embrace self-care, to rejuvenate creative energy through journaling, yoga, dance. My favorite was the one we did on forest bathing. Wow, what a fabulous tradition that started in Japan, and it just completely calms you to be in a forest, really connecting with the trees.
I think that's if maybe even your phrase there that you picked up on, Rob, that Cheri used. That might even be the name of this podcast episode. I think if we're looking at creatively alive, reinvent creativity alive, or bringing creativity alive. If you had a statement that you wanted to wrap up on, and that through line, that message that people listening at home can hold on to, what would be your message to the teachers, to the parents, to the listeners here today? What would you want to tell them?
That together we can bring the colorful wings to the invisible things that live in the hearts and minds of children.
Wow, that's so poetic. Cheri, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheri.
Wow, Rob, that term, creatively alive.
Creatively alive. I've never heard that term before. And, I talk and listen a lot about creativity and design, and what a wonderful term.
Yeah, it's a great term. Practical advice there too. So Cheri mentioned that Facebook group, the Crayola Education Facebook group. Anyone listening in that wants to learn a little bit more about what they're doing, tap into some of those resources. 2.6 million teachers downloading resources.
That must be having a lot of impact.
Do you know what? Just as soon as she said that, my brain went to each teacher, how many on average, how many students does a teacher actually
20,
have?
30 a year?
20, 30 in a primary school setting, in a high school or middle school. Over in the States, middle school as well. Much larger than just 30, but so you're talking about potentially impacting the learning outcomes of tens of millions of students globally.
And like she said, that aligns well with what teachers and parents want for their young people. It's really about creativity and problem solving, and it's not just about getting great marks or anything like that. So making real impact where it matters.
Yeah, and so neatly fits with this whole concept that we're talking here with HB and Intel about reinventing the classroom, redesigning learning, and making sure our education system is fit for purpose for the 21st century.
I really enjoyed that conversation.
It's a good one.